Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up. October was kind of a crazy month for me. I was super busy this entire month, so I only made like 2 videos this month, or I think I technically made 3. I made the final video going along with the Reblog Book Club playlist that I do, where we were discussing Dumplin' by Julie Murphy. There are spoilers in that last video, so if you haven't read the book yet, don't watch that video. I liked it. It was like a 3-star read for me. It was a little bit rushed, especially towards the end, but I felt like it was a really interesting book that discussed things that I at least haven't read before in a young adult book, and especially having an overweight character where her weight is definitely a concern, but it's not the only thing going on in her life was very nice. So if you like young adult contemporary books, this is definitely one that I would recommend picking up because I do think it's a really good book. Then I put up a review of Smaller and Smaller Circles by F.H. Vatican. I read that one in September and I pre-recorded a review of it, which is the only reason why I was able to get that out in October. So if you're interested in that book and you haven't checked out that review yet, definitely check it out. It's a really great mystery and I highly recommend it to anyone who likes mystery/thriller books. And then last week I put up a Friday Reads, which you are welcome to watch, but I'm going to be talking about all of those books in this video, so there might not be a point anymore, although there's a couple other things I talk about in that video, so maybe go check it out. I don't know, your choice. So despite October being a really busy month for me, I was still able to read a decent amount. So the first thing that I finished in October was Alex and Ada Volume 3. This is the final volume in this series, and I really liked it. Alex and Ada is probably one of the best graphic novel series that I've ever read because I think it explores really interesting ideas about what it means to be a human and what it means to love and how to treat other people. Obviously I'm not going to talk too much about this one in case you guys haven't read Alex and Ada yet, but I highly recommend you pick up this series if you haven't already. I found the ending to be good, not great. I felt like it was a little bit too neat for me, but overall I really enjoyed this series a lot, and again I highly recommend it. The next book that I finished was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and the subtitle to this is How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. This is a book I listened to on audiobook and I really enjoyed it. I've been reading / looking for a lot more of these sort of like self-helpy type books, or at least like more nonfiction that discusses these types of ideas, but it's a really great book. It talks again about vulnerability and how that affects our lives and how we are, terrified of it, but how important it is for us to function as like human beings, the importance of being vulnerable to other people, and obviously there's levels to that and there's such a thing as being too vulnerable, and she discusses all of that in the book. Vulnerability is something that you struggle with because I definitely do. This is definitely a great book worth checking out. This is actually a book that I think I want to pick up in physical form so that way I can sort of like mark it up and things like that. Then I read When I Was the Greatest by Jason Reynolds. I always struggle when saying his name. This is an author who's coming to Book Riot Live, and so I read this book to prepare for Book Riot Live, and I really like this book. It wasn't at all what I was expecting it to be. You're following these 3 young adult boys, I think they're in their early teens, as they're growing up in New York City. The main character's name is Ali, and he got that nickname from his sister because he takes boxing lessons. It follows his friends Noodles and Needles. Noodles and Needles are both brothers, and Needles suffers from Tourette syndrome, and so you're just following them as they are growing up in this slightly rougher neighborhood in New York City, and as they're sort of just trying to figure out their lives. Noodles is one of those guys who feels like he constantly has to prove himself, where they're forced to figure out who they are and who they want to be. It's really interesting and it's a really great perspective on teen life that I feel like isn't explored very much. These complicated relationships between families, these complicated relationships that happen when you're just growing up as a teenager, but also just being slightly on the poorer side, and sort of what expectations are for young, specifically black men growing up, things like that. It's really great. It's a pretty short book. It's 250 pages max, so I was able to read it in 1 or 2 nights, but I definitely recommend it, and I have one of Jason Reynolds' other books because I want to read more of the things that he's written. The next book that I finished was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is a book that took me a little while to read, partially because I was in a little bit of a weird headspace earlier this month because I was so busy. I wasn't really having the brain capacity to read slightly deeper books. So this is a book I finally finished when I went on a trip this month, and so I brought it on the plane with me, and so I finally had uninterrupted time to read this book, and I liked it. I don't want to talk too much about it because I think part of the fun of this book is the slow reveal of the book. You're following these three characters named Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy, and they are at what seems to be like a boarding school named Halisham, and you know there's something special about them, and it's just like following them as they're growing up. This book is told basically between two time periods, when they are kids going to school and when they're grown ups, and so there's a little bit of a flashback, flash forward, and you're sort of getting pieces about their lives and what's going on with them slowly as the book continues on, which I thought was really great. It was kind of fun to sort of see this story reveal itself slowly over time, and to see them sort of like dropping hints as they're having discussions, and you start to pick up these little pieces and you start to realize what's really going on. One of the things that I do have to say about this book is that it is a slower book. I'm glad I took my time with this one, because I think if I rushed through it I would have missed a lot of the details that are in here. But I do think that this book doesn't quite go deep enough for me. I would have loved some more explanation of their world and their situation and just what's happening around them and things like that. But I suppose this book isn't really about that. It's more about these characters and what they're growing through and their struggle to figure out who they are, what their purpose is. There's a lot of like subtle discussions going on in here about destiny and your path in life and things like that, and you see these characters sort of having those conversations, but I would have liked them to really have those conversations. There's a lot of like tiptoeing around discussions and characters thinking and feeling things but not truly knowing what's exactly going on. This is all told from one character's perspective, Kathy, and so you don't really know what's going on in the other characters' heads, and you don't even completely know a lot of the times what's going on in Kathy's head, because she doesn't seem to want to admit a lot of things, so it becomes this like complicated dance around the issues. So I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars just because I wish it went a little bit deeper. The next book that I finished was Living Well, Spending Less by Ruth Sokup, and the subtitle to this, even though it's slightly covered by the library tag, is 12 Secrets of the Good Life. This is a book that I picked up because I'm currently working on getting my finances in order, or becoming someone who handles her finances much better than she currently does. So this is a book that I picked up because this is a blog that I follow. This book is split up into 2 parts, the Living Well part and the Spending Less part, and then each of those parts is split up into different sections, so the 12 steps or 12 suggestions. So I had varying reactions to this based on what section or what step that they were talking about. The Living Well stuff is about like figuring out what you want to do with your life and learning contentment. Ruth Sokup talks a lot about how she was / is like a shopaholic, and how she could easily spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, on everything possible. But she also talks about how when her and her husband were trying to save money, she became really good at finding deals, but she still was buying a lot of stuff. Like, she was just bringing so much stuff into their house, and so that was just also a waste, and how she had to learn to just not buy so much, or learn how to not buy so much, buying all of this unnecessary things for her and her family. She had to like learn how to break those habits, so she talks about that a lot. But I think the spending well or the spending less part is the part that most people would be interested in, because she talks about things like how to cut your grocery bill, the importance of like constantly cleaning up or having a clean home, and how that like relieves stress from your brain. This book is a Christian book, so there's a lot of Bible in here. She uses a lot of different Bible verses and Bible stories to explain and illustrate her points, or to provide support for her different points. So if that's something that bothers you, I noticed that on the Goodreads a lot of people are really upset by that, because there's no real indication that this is a Christian book unless you notice that this is published by Zondervan, which is a Christian publishing house. So if you're someone who's sort of like just starting to live on their own, or just starting to manage their own household for the first time or anything like that, I feel like this would be a pretty good book to pick up, because it does have some good practical steps. There were some of the stories in here were a little weird and felt like they were stories just for the sake of stories, and so I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. And the final book that I finished this month was Career of Evil by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling, as you all know. This is the 3rd book in the Cormoran Strike series. Cormoran Strike series. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I plan on doing a review on it, because I have lots of thoughts, but if you want like a quick summary of it, you can go check out my Goodreads, because I wrote a little bit on there about how I felt about the book. In general, I feel like the mysteries in the series get stronger with every book, so I am thoroughly enjoying this series a lot, but I will have a review of this up next week for you guys to check out if you are interested. And then quickly, in terms of what I'm currently reading, I'm still working my way through A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which I mentioned in my Friday reads last week. I'm currently about halfway through this book. I don't have a significant amount of plans this weekend. I say that now knowing that now I'll probably have significant amount of plans over the weekend. So I'm hoping to finish this one over the weekend, so feel free to follow me on Goodreads if you want to see like immediate reaction to this book. So far I'm really liking it, but I've heard the second half of the book is where a lot of people have issues with this book, so we'll see how I feel. And then the other book that I'm currently reading is Through the Eyes of a Lion, Facing Impossible Pain, Finding Incredible Power by Levi Lesko. This is a Christian book. Levi Lesko is a pastor in Montana, I believe, but my pastor has a podcast and he interviews different people like writers and pastors and talks to them about different things, and so he had Levi Lesko on there talking about the things that he's been through. His daughter passed away a couple years ago and she was pretty young, like 3 or 4 years old, I believe. The way that he talked about pain and loss and things like that just really intrigued me, and he has this book that came out, so I ended up picking up a copy for myself, and I'm only a chapter in, but I'm liking it so far. So yeah, that is my October. Just a quick reminder, next weekend is Book Riot Live. I'll have a link down below in case you guys haven't heard of it at all, but it's taking place in New York City from November 6th and 7th, or 7th and 8th. I'm going to be moderating a panel there, so if you guys are going to be there, feel free to come up to me and say hi, or if you just see me wandering around, feel free to come up to me and say hi, but we would love to have you guys there. So yeah, that was basically my October. Feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know how your October went, what your favorite read of the month was possibly. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.